This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
A little self-care can go a long way, especially amidst the hustle and bustle of the holidays. That's where Vegamore comes in. Trusted by millions, Vegamore is all about giving your hair the love and care it deserves. With their vegan and cruelty-free formulas, you can nourish and revitalize your strands while indulging in some much-needed pampering. Because let's face it, who couldn't use a bit more me time this time of year? Go to vegamore.com/ACAST, code ACAST. That's vegamor.com/ACAST, code ACAST.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and film critic, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Carrie Rickey, whose new biography, Agnès Varda, A Complicated Life, has just been published to rave reviews, and it's a stunning and very necessary biography of a figure who has gained in prominence as the years have passed. Not that she needed necessarily to gain in prominence, because she was already a huge and vital figure, not only in the French New Wave, but in world cinema generally. Thank you for joining me, Carrie.
Thank you so much for asking me.
I wanted to talk to you first of all about your first meeting with Agnès Varda, because it's always great to have someone who, has first-hand knowledge of their subject.
Well, my first encounter with Varda was not in person. My first encounter with Varda was at age 18 in a film history class taught by Manny Farber. And he announced that we were going to be watching a movie by a still photographer who make movies. And he tried to pronounce her name correctly, but he said Agnès Varda. And I thought it was a Scot. Agnès, of course. And then I could read enough French then that I realized it was Agnès Varda. And I'd never realized that women could make movies. I was 18 and I thought I knew movies, but I didn't. And it was just astonishing. That movie was such an event and life-changing event. It was Cléo from 5 to 7. And I was stunned. But my first personal experience with Varda would have been, that was 1971. It would have been 17 years later at the Cannes Film Festival. I was then a critic for the Philadelphia Inquirer. And as those of you who've been to Cannes as critics know, Unifrance give a lunch for the English critics or English-speaking critics, but then that's not the same luncheon that they invite American critics to. And so
very delicate games have to be played.
Yes. And it was the luncheon for American critics. And I believe Agnès and I were the only two women there. And we were seated next to each other. And she looks at me with, those black olive eyes and says, I was hoping for the New York Times, but I get the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I was do I slap her? Do I just laugh? What do I do? I didn't know how to behave because I liked her movies so much. So I was very quiet and I just looked ahead and said nothing. And then she said, how do you spell your last name? I spelled it. And she said, oh, you wrote that piece about the Los Angeles murals. That was very useful when I made Moo. And then I guess I had elevated in her mind because we shared an interest. And we had a, I wouldn't say wonderful conversation, but spirited. She was very funny and very entertaining, and also would challenge you if she thought you were wrong or not being serious. And so
it sounds a little bit like that's almost a test at the very beginning. That's off.
Absolutely.
Are you going to just shrink from that, or are you going to come back at me, or what are you going to do?
Right. Well, are you worthwhile to talk to, or should I look to my left?
Do you think that there was an element also of sort of hustling, of sort of like I'm having to curate my reputation and I'm having to promote myself to some degree. So was there an element of that, or am I being too utilitarian?
I think she came to Cannes every year because that's where one meets producers and investors and whatever. And I don't think she could do that. She wasn't going to get money from anyone at a critics luncheon. And she was a curator of her reputation, very careful one, as many people are, as many people in public. But she was entertaining. Also, I will say one thing. Oh no, that was in '98. I was later. I met her another time at Cannes in '98, and she vaguely remembered me. But that time, in '98, she had, her husband Jacques Demy had died in 1990, and she spent much of the '90s making movies to secure his legacy. And the Jacques of Nantes is a very lovely biography of Demy's early years, but the ones about the looking back at the like Demoiselle de Cherbourg and I forgot the last, but they got sequentially less important. And I remember saying to her, it was cruel. I would like it would be great to see your movies again. And a very important American film curator looked at me, who's very tall, looked at me, and I don't think he was behind Agnès, and she couldn't see me. He goes, "Don't encourage her." And I was pissed at him for years.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. I didn't realize that there were those who didn't admire her. I was surprised, and I felt like this crazy one woman cheerleading squad for Varda. But I had no idea that anyone thought of her that way.
I don't even know if I didn't like somebody's work particularly, or it didn't particularly call to me, I still wouldn't be like, don't encourage them to make films, because who knows what might come out. And she was on the cusp of having a whole new burst of creative life at that point.
This person who I will not identify, and who is a friend of mine.
Okay, better not then. I won't encourage you.
Now thinks very, very differently. I think the Gleaners and I really was, as they say in America, a game changer. Introduced her to a new generation. I mean, she was always pretty much ahead of the curve of what was happening in the culture. She was one of those people who was naturally wired. The zeitgeist always hit her first before anyone else. I don't know. She traveled a lot. She's a very keen reader and observer, and she could tell what was coming, and she was looking for signs of what was coming everywhere. I think for her whole life, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, if we go right back to the beginning, she came from a family that had was comfortable and was able.
I think we can say upper middle class.
Yeah, and was able to provide her with a sort of more than a safety net. We've actually, help invest in her future. But she also, I mean, she didn't take the safe path that was perhaps provided for her. She, I loved the description you gave of her sort of going off to Corsica and sleeping under the stars. And you just think nowadays young people aren't necessarily encouraged to take that kind of risk and go on that kind of adventure. But she seemed to be already gifted with a determination at that point.
Well, it was either on her 18th or 19th birthday. The dates are vague in Vardaland. But she renames herself. She was born Arlette Varda, which she thought was too girly. And she changes her name Agnès, but she never changes it legally, which is fascinating. On her passport, it's Arlette Varda, known as Anya. But she changes her name. She has some money, and she basically runs away from a very nice Parisian apartment where her sisters and brothers live, and her mother and father occasionally. And she takes a third-class train to the south of France and then a ferry to Corsica. And when she's grown up, when she's lived in the southern France town of Sète, she's learned a lot about nets and fishing. And she's sitting at this pier and she sees a torn net, and she has the equipment to start mending it. And a fisherman says, "Hey, do you need a job?" And she says, "Yeah." And can you row my men out to sea in the morning and back at night, and in between mend nets? And she says, "Sure." And says she's living in the company of 4 men. And she kind of said, it was my entrance into the world of whatever that means, many things.
Relatively exclusive sphere to some degree.
Well, she had grown up with, 2 sisters and 2 brothers, but I think she talks about in her memoirs that neither her mother or older sister ever talked to her about menstruation or sex. And I mean, her parents were basically Victorians, and this was the world of men, which might have met the world of her father. It was very unknown, and I don't know whether that was about sexual initiation, social, but she was always very tuned in to and empathetic with working. And she considered herself a working person. She wasn't slumming. She lived the life. She was thrifty. She took great vacations though. But she was very thrifty. She knew how to cook. She had just an intuitive knowledge of camera and other equipment. This may have been because her father was an engineer, and it interested me when I read he was always creating devices that made delivery of food and heavy equipment to ships easier. And the methods he used were on tracks to move the stuff, and then cranes to pick them up and put them in storage on the boats. And it's interesting that Agnès, who did not like her father, she loved tracking shots and she loved crane shots. But I don't know whether she just understood machinery and devices intuitively. But I think anyone who takes photographs of children on Santa's lap and has to take like 300 or 400 a day during the holiday season, she didn't need a light meter. She could read light. She understood framing. She just naturally, and it became natural, and she could frame shots very quickly. And if she didn't like it, she would reframe them, whether it was a photograph or. And Lynn Littman, who's an American director, Oscar-winning documentary filmmaker, and maker of a feature called Testament. Littman told me she always had assistants, but she didn't need them. She could do any job on a film, and she could do it better than we could. But sometimes she couldn't be in every place. And that was the kind of filmmaker.
There's a sort of do-it-yourself ethos, but that community that she entered as well would become like a point of inspiration and actually sort of raw material for her. But as you say, she wasn't really looking at it when she came to photograph it and later to film it as an outsider, because she'd already had experience. She didn't turn up with a camera she was in the community first and then turned up with a camera
Right.
afterwards.
And really, she was able, not with me, of course, but she was able to make friends very easily. She knew how to take an interest in people's lives, which was very flattering. And she was a very, very good interview. We see in the Gleaners and I, as we infer from her first movie, La Pointe Courte. Forgive me if you're francophones, I can't pronounce, but
I'm not going to say anything because I mispronounced her name right at the top of the episode.
it's okay. I'm only saying Agnès because it's Europe, you know. In America, she's Agnes.
Right, I'm happy to stand corrected. Believe me. Yeah. So she makes her first, her first feature, which I think you describe really interestingly as sort of like almost two films put together. Sort of there's a documentary element and there's also a relationship drama. And right there in embryo, you've kind of got her whole career.
Well, she's always seeing at multiple levels. La Pointe Courte is the story of a marriage on the rocks and whether this couple will get together. They're facing, a tragedy in their marriage. And this personal story is against a backdrop of a community story of the fishing community in crisis because the water is polluted and the health department won't let them fish and ply their trade and feed their families. And it's both the micro and the macro, and she's always able to see these levels. And I think her movie with the most profound exploration of this is The Gleaners and I, how small things that we do can have large impact on the unfed and unhoused. And we should, not consume too much. We should fix what's broken, both literally and figuratively, and we should distribute food differently. And she's always looking, at the individual and the community, which is very fascinating. And in one of her best early features, Cléo from 5 to 7, she's looking at an individual who's not quite yet part of the community, but kind of a goddess in that community. And she de-goddesses herself and becomes a person who no longer worries about being looked at, but wants to do the looking herself. And it's a story about a woman who doesn't prize herself only because she's beautiful, but because she can connect to other people. And very moving.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, one of the stories in the book is the erasure that she suffers at the hands both of historians, but kind of also an ongoing erasure as she's even working, that she's being ignored, she's not being put in the same category as a nouvelle vague and as her contemporaries, even though she's sort of making these films before they do. She's the one who's actually in the avant-garde of the avant-garde, and she's doing a lot of the things. I mean, there's a connective tissue between her and the Italian neo-realists as well.
And when Alain René was editing her first movie, he said, "Boy, have you ever seen Visconti?" And she says, "What's a Visconti?" And I mean, she really had not seen many films before she
So
made
25 in 25 years, she saw.
That
sounds like that sounds a little bit of a myth making there.
Yeah, but she knew how to construct a good story. But she was mostly interested in movies for their writing. She talks about loving Jacques Prévert movies, and that's interesting. But she doesn't really talk about how movies look. But she has once she masters photography, which is the only coursework she actually completed. She's at the École du Louvre for 3 years, studying art history and archaeology and painting, and she doesn't finish her final year. She audits classes at the Sorbonne, but wants to audit them because she doesn't really want to take tests. And then when she decides that she wants to master a craft, and she wants to be an artisan, she remembers that her mother had given her this secondhand Rolleiflex when she passed her baccalaureate, and she realizes that's the tool she's had. That's why don't I maximize this? And she goes to the School of Photography and Cinematography to get licensed as a professional photographer. And she does a 2 years of coursework in a year, and has part-time jobs, photographing communions and weddings and everything else. And I don't think she ever slept. But well, that's not true. She had the capability, even late in life, to be able to sleep anywhere. I mean, there's photographs of her in the Agnès Varda room of the Toronto Film Festival when they dedicated it to her. She'd lay down and she fell asleep while they were giving toasts to her. She could sleep anywhere. She slept when necessary, like Edison.
Yeah, absolutely. Just curl up in a. I must admit, I've slept pretty much everywhere in the Cannes Film Festival as well. You can't name a theater in the Cannes Film Festival that I haven't slept in, and I can rate them. I can rate the difference, including the Agnès Varda as quite comfortable, actually, quite a comfortable place in Rona.
Well, the Cannes venues are very, very nice. The movie theaters where people are in the marché, where people are showing the stuff in the market, are, as I remember, less comfortable. But I haven't been to Cannes for like 20 odd years. So
yeah. No, it's one of those after dinner conversations that you always have with fellow journalists, where you start talking about what's the best sleep you've ever had at a film festival.
Oh, well, the way I did it is I would not see movies that started after 7 at 7 p.m. was the last starting time for me to see a movie, because I was out by 9:30 or 10. Yeah, totally out.
A good policy. And so you've got her in the 14th arrondissement of Paris, and you have that quote, which I'm not from Paris, I'm from the 14th arrondissement.
Yes.
And she's quickly attracting to her lots of really creative collaborators and lots of names that we'll know, from their own films. You've already mentioned Alain René as one.
Yes, but before she made her film, she knew a lot about art. Her mother, who was hard of hearing, was an amazing reader and art appreciator. And I think Varda's first experience of visual storytelling is the altarpiece at Ghent. Her mother used to take the kids very frequently, and she was big, impressive, by the Van Eyck brothers. And I think she's very connected to her mother, and her mother to her. And her mother, I think, thinks she's different from the other kids in that she's quick, she's smart, she wants to absorb everything. And Varda was really interested when she starts taking photographs of artists' work, and her photographs of Calder make you laugh and cry at the same time. This Varda, of course, is a 5-foot giant, and Calder is like a 6'5" giant. And she's telling him, take that mobile into the middle of the street and dance with it. And she's making these joyous photographs of the happy Calder dancing with this beautiful mobile. And she's taking photographs of her hero, Brassai, this beautiful chronicler of nocturnal Paris. And I don't know if you've ever seen this movie that French TV made of Varda taking photographs of Brassai. You could find it. You can find it on the internet, like everything else. It's this little 6-minute slapstick movie of Varda leaving her house and finding Brassai on the street and photographing him against the crumbling plaster walls of the 14th. And it's wonderful. It's her before she made La Pointe Courte, and it's her first movie, but she's the star. And I just love watching it. I don't know the director who made it, but made it like a Buster Keaton movie with silent movie music. And it's just it's one of those movies I watch when I'm depressed. I just want to be cheered up. Like watching the Nicholas Brothers dance or watching Fred Astaire dance. I just pull it up from my computer and watch it. It's lovely, and I recommend it to everyone.
I should hunt that out because that sounds amazing.
And she's also a natural in front of the camera, which she proved herself to later be. I mean, she had all these qualities that you don't usually find in a director. She was incredibly articulate. She holds the screen. And she has such force of personality and just this beautiful tobacco cured voice, very Jean Moreau voice. And she's just as good as everything behind the camera. I mean, I think, I enjoy watching Scorsese make cameos in his own movies or other people's movies, but Varda could have been a star. Had she so wanted. She really has that magnetism.
I was going to say, that magnetic charisma, and it reminds me a little bit, although I don't want to make too many comparisons because they sometimes seem reductive, but like a Werner Herzog in the, a massive personality and as well as completely capable of doing stuff.
Herzog is the only other filmmaker who comes to mind who has such power in front of the camera. Yeah. Also, his power of using English is immensely both entertaining and edifying.
Yeah, and just
I mean, he speaks English like no one else.
Absolutely, he's made it into English into an art form in and of itself.
So, but I think Varda has that too, and I mean, she was so multilingual. I've heard her, make puns in several languages, and maybe, double entendres and puns at the same time. She was fast. She was tennis competition fast in her comebacks.
There's a real fluidity to her in more ways than one. I mean, obviously you have in her private life, there's a sexual fluidity. In professional life, she can be behind or in front of the camera, and she can do documentary, and she can do fiction, and she can do shorts, and she can do them all with the same sense of importance.
And you always forget the fiction films are also documentaries, and the documentaries also have some fiction in them. Or she's added things or gone back to reshot because she saw something and then she will restage it. And I mean that happens a lot in La Pointe Court. But my favorite story about La Pointe Court is about, she loved cats, and she wanted cats in certain scenes, and she would rub walls and certain places with mullet to get the cats to do certain things, and then she would finally have to stare them down. But she figured out a way to make cats act, which is a triumph. And she is a very underappreciated inventor of the cat video, I would say, and that became so important in the age of the internet.
But she made a short about her cat, and she made a short about her cat's resting place as well.
Yes, Zigugu.
Yes, exactly. And there's no sense that she's doing this to be cute or to be.
Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head-to-head for the last chicken wing. Shop Game Day Faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
I mean, she's doing this because that's part of her life and she really cares about it.
She loved cats. Cats loved her. She was very cat-like herself, with the large, pure, penetrating eyes. She knew how to use silence. to get her way, to make a statement. She's totally fascinating, and she made me laugh a lot. She's actually a really good writer too. And
I was going to say, it sounds like you've kept really good company writing this book. You feel like in getting to know her, you've kind of fallen in love with her a
well,
bit.
I didn't appreciate her so much the first time I met her.
Mm.
Loved her movies, but how can you not appreciate someone who basically works from the age of 19 to the age of almost 91 without stopping, and who masters multiple media, and who reinvents multiple media. And as a daily journalist, I spent a lot of my time writing obituaries of directors and actors and projecting a 3-act structure on their lives so it had some shape. And I realized Varda lived a 3-act structure. She worked in 3 different media. She worked in still photography, and when she said that became too still for her, she added another, not a dimension to it, but another level. She moved to moving pictures. And then when she thought that moving pictures or movies would be too expensive and impossible to fund, she segued into 3-dimensional artist installations. So she's going from still to moving to atmospheric. And she's always assigning herself another task to master. She, there's several times you've written a book, that you think, I can't go on. I just can't do this anymore. And I thought, well, Agnès never gave up. Follow her model.
Yeah, yeah. What an inspiration.
Just ram through that brick wall.
Yeah.
No, I mean, to people who, a lot of people don't know who she is. And they said, why would I want to read this book? I said, because as you age, you will need her as a guide. You will need Agnès. And she was just indefatigable. She did not take no for an answer.
Because she has so much opposition in terms of institutional opposition and difficulties in life. Her husband is a wonderful character who comes, a wonderful person in and of himself, and that relationship as well is beautifully described in your book, but tragically short. Tragically curtailed.
I think, Jacques Demy, her husband, a very great filmmaker, as where Agnès loved improvisation, and she knew from still photography that things could happen that would make an image better. Since Demy did a lot of musicals and he had to time them and time the dialogue, nothing could be changed. He wrote the script, it was sacrosanct. Varda would happily change the script if she thought it could make the movie better. I mean, you see in Cléo from 5 to 7, suddenly she's doing these vertical pans to the signs on a pharmacy window because the heroine is afraid of that she has cancer, and so she's looking at this pharmacy as maybe having the will save her or not save her. But Varda's always including that kind of stuff, and they're aesthetically, she and Demy couldn't be more dissimilar, but they're both bisexual, and I think that he was a very devout Catholic growing up. His parents were still alive, and he did not want to come out. But when they went to California for Jacques to make the model shop, I think he saw a much more open world, less judgmental, and that's the world he wanted to live in. And she loved him. I believe he loved her. And when he got sick at the end of his life with AIDS, she took care of him. And as with her first movie, La Pointe Courte, was made because she wanted to distract the husband of a good friend from he had brain cancer. And she just wanted to take him on this adventure where he wasn't thinking about himself, but they could make something together. And when Jacques got sick, she said, he was writing his memoirs. And she said, honey, this is a movie. And he said, you make it. And that was, in some sense, a distraction for him. And, and he gave her crits at the end of the day, like put a hat on the boy if he's talking to the father or the Catholic brother, and do not. He would always have he would doff his hat to the priest, and it was their maybe only collaborative movie, although they did give each other notes and suggestions, and he was hugely supportive of her, and she was hugely supportive of him. It was an amazing creative relationship.
Almost unique. I mean, I can't think of any other relationship in which one of or other of the partners doesn't feel like they're somewhat in the shadow of the other. Whereas this feels like you've got two major
Straub and Huillet, maybe.
Yeah.
That's the only one I could think of, and they were collaborators. But Straub seemed to get most of the credit. But that was the year. That was the 70s and 80s. But yeah, that's the only other one. And they made movies together. Varda and Demy made movies parallel. They were on parallel tracks. But yeah, it's now it's in the since the 80s we have the Taviani brothers, the Coen brothers. We have brothers and sisters making movies together. We have more. It's more collaborative, but they were very unusual, and they had the same sense of humor. I mean, they were great punsters. He asked her, he didn't have anyone to write the lyrics for the song Lola, and Varda sat down and she wrote this little song, C'est moi, c'est Lola, and which is very charming. And the most interesting thing I found out from Michel Legrand's memoir is that he didn't want to work with Demy. He wanted to work with with what Truffaut would have called the cinema de papa. He wanted to work with the established film directors, and that it was Agnès who said, "What, you'd rather work with the old warhorse than a young Demy, a young creative person?" And she guilted him into collaboration with Demy. Guy Legrand was very grateful.
Absolutely, and he said, I've lost an organ. It was. I mean, that was a beautiful quote. It also makes me think. In the book, I get a real sense, and I might be pushing a metaphor too much here, but it's like you've got the still photography in the moving pictures. You've got Agnès moving all the time and traveling and going to China and different places, but then the still photography part of her life is like the home in Paris, where it's almost like a work of art in itself.
Oh, it is, and yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't really describe it well, but it was at one time a cheese store across a courtyard from a framing store. And the courtyard was fitted with latrines because it was probably built in the 18th or 19th century. And she took these two buildings, and on one side was studios and a dark room, and the other side was the living space. And it was, as her gallerist called it, infinite work in progress. There was always something new to look at. There was always, a new artwork, a new collection, and it was. And her children still live there.
And there's a brilliant moment in the book where Michel Legrand is composing the music as Demy is writing the script, and in the other room, Vardas is in the other studio. Vardas is doing her thing, and it's just like, wow, what that would be a morning, And then they're cooking together and eating together, and it's just so idyllic almost,
And she has a daughter from a prior relationship whom Demy adopted, and she and Demy have a son together. And it was a very their home was not a formal salon, but it was basically like you hear about these bohemian salons of the 19th century. People who frequented, who were visiting Varda, or I know a couple of researchers who was working in her archive, And they said the door would ring and, Delphine Seyrig would walk in, and the door would ring and the president of France would walk in. It was very open. People were always popping in and out. And, in the 1980s and 1990s, Varda, well, in the 1980s, she made a movie called Daguerreotype about all the artisans in her neighborhood, the tailors and hairdressers and bakers. And she thought of her neighborhood as, butcher, baker, candlestick maker. And she bought a little storefront across the street from her house. And she took her editing bay there and sold DVDs out of there. But people could walk by and watch her edit a movie. She wanted to be part of this artisan community. And she didn't think a movie needed to be 2 hours long and have movie stars. She think it could be 12 minutes long and about caryatids in certain neighborhoods of France. She could make a movie that was, 3 minutes long and be about the Cinémathèque Française. One of her most interesting series was a French series called Une minute pour une image. A minute per image, for her image. It was a series on for like between 90 seconds and 2 minutes after the 11 o'clock news every night. And she would show an image in silence for 30 seconds. 30 seconds of silence on TV. That never happens.
No.
Yeah, then you hear Varda or someone else say, or you'll hear Varda interview someone and say, well, what do you think of this image? And it's usually a civilian, often someone who's not highly educated in the arts, say, well, this is what I see. And then Varda would come on and say, the picture is by, let's say, famous photographer. And his intention was blah, blah, blah. But, what you say is really important, because once artists make something, it's artists for the outside world. It's for to be shared, and other people see with other eyes and bring themselves to it. And that's what art is about. But she did 360 of these, or maybe, no, she did 6 months worth, maybe 180. And it was on TV. And the next morning, one of the French newspapers would do a print version and a transcript of it. And it was fantastic. I've only seen maybe 30 of them. And what a way to bring art to the world, to go where the viewers are instead of the viewers coming to where the art is. I don't know how influenced Varda was by André Malraux, who wrote Museum Without Walls and was later Minister of Culture in France. But he always wrote how it was important for art to be shared, and it was democratic. We needed to make art more democratic. I think Varda was really committed to that, and that was something I kind of knew unconsciously, but I didn't know that she worked so hard to bring art into the open. And I don't know whether she was really influenced by the murals in Los Angeles, which were largely made by artists who weren't being shown in galleries.
Yeah, they weren't choosing not to be shown in galleries. They weren't getting.
But she loved that. She and Jacques lived in Venice, where a lot of these murals were, and it was, and frankly, I lived there my parents lived there for 40 years, and it was this open air museum, and people enjoyed it. And when you recognize someone from a mural, they were like a movie star, just an ordinary person. But I saw you on Venice Boulevard.
It's really a walk the walk, isn't it? I mean, we all bewail how art can be, in some ways outside of people's ordinary lives or common existence, or the dumbing down of culture or something. But to actually have the imagination to say, okay, I know how to do this. I know how to bring people into the conversation and to listen to their conversation. That's a really interesting and direct step.
It's a real gift. But another thing that just totally amazed me about Varda is she knew everyone. Everyone wanted to be her friend. She really connected. I mean, who else in the world is friends with, Huey Newton, a Black activist in California, her friends, Susan Sontag and Simone de Beauvoir are her comrades in the anti-war movement and the feminist movement. She was friends with, of course, Catherine Deneuve, who starred in her husband's movies, but they were pregnant at the same time and became very close. She was friends with everyone. Jim Morrison. She's friends with Jim Morrison.
I didn't know any of that. That was so fascinating.
Jim Morrison was a failed UCLA film student who became a great rock and roll star, but he adored Varda and Demy. She's just an extraordinary woman. And I mean, this is like apart from the movies and the art. And I mean, I grew up writing about art a lot, but I was too involved in movies to be paying attention when she started doing the artist installations. And they're fantastic. They're just fantastic. And I mean, there's one called Along the Shore, and it's on a wall is a picture of a moving sea. At the base of this wall, I believe there's a still image of the shore, and then in front of the still image is sound. Things that are represented, sorry. And the moving all at once is just, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing without drugs. And she's just, what can you say?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many people who have swapped lanes, so to speak, or tried their hands and different things, but you always kind of see them trying their hand. Tom Hanks writes a novel and it's like, okay,
exactly,
stick to your lane. You're not really.
Well, Ethan Hawke wrote an okay novel.
Yeah, Sean Penn
Yeah.
really should not be allowed to do things anymore.
He can act, though. He's a good actor.
He's an amazing actor. He's an amazing actor, but his novels, are just sixth form ephemera. But with Vardas, it just seems almost like it's because it's
organic.
Yeah, exactly. Like she's not making an effort. She's not. It feels like it's so much part of her ethos. She's still mending nets.
Well, she loves the handmade. That's very beautiful. Oh, John, that's such a nice. I wish I was smart enough to put that in the book. Yeah, she's still meant.
We're catching something. It's so, but honestly, that the book has so inspired me. It was such an intro. So I've loved Varda as a very late arrival. As someone who's come to her work only in the last few years, and felt thoroughly angry at the fact that the history of the French New Wave pushes you towards some people and not others. But
that's been corrected. I mean,
yes.
It was horrible for her to read a two issues of Cahiers du Cinéma about the French New Wave, and she wasn't even in it.
No.
I mean, that was depressing. It was horrible to her to read an issue of Musadora, a feminist magazine about filmmakers, and she wasn't even mentioned. That was the 1980s for her, and she was really, really depressed. And then she comes back with a movie called Vagabond,
which is an exceptional movie. I mean, that's such a film about a character who is refusing likability, is on the absolute margins of everything, and yet at the same time is utterly compelling and utterly complex and enigmatic. And it's so good, that film.
And that movie, which is kind of like Citizen Kane, in that the central figure is dead at the beginning, but Varda reaches out to all these people she touched, and everyone has a different idea of who she was. And for many of the women, she represented absolute freedom. For many of the men, she represents a good lay. And it's this vagabond who has so many things inside her. She is an infinity of women, and she different. It's again about perception. Varda is always saying that different people see things differently, and and she appreciates it, and she appreciates the opinions of others and the readings of others. And
it was all inspired by a hitchhiker.
Yes, she picked up. The movie was initially supposed to be about the plane tree disease in the south of France because the trees were dying. And she picks up a hitchhiker as she's on her way to scout locations, and she realizes this hitchhiker's life is so much more interesting than plane tree death.
Who knew?
So.
And she turns on a sixpence, and I love the fact that she hires the hitchhiker, who is similar to the main character, a sort of vagabond herself. Yes. And she can't stick to the job. She's like, nah, I'm out of here.
She's always sleeping on the floor, drunk. But Satina Arhab is the name of the woman, but she was Varda's guide, and it's fascinating.
Very last question: a recommended film book, please.
I think I don't know why I just thought of this, because there's so many great film books. But well, just for pure pleasure, Frank Langella, the American actor, wrote a book called Drop Names. It's the naughtiest book ever written, and it's hilarious. I love John Waters' many books about film. Crackpot is one I would recommend. I think that the most important book for me as a film critic and historian is Molly Haskell's From Reverence to Rape. It is the greatest. It reframed movie history in a very revolutionary way, and that's
what a brilliant trio of writers. I can think of anything, and I don't think the first two, definitely. Molly has been on the show, which has been great. But John Waters and Frank, that's the first time they've been given recommended film books.
Also, Spike Lee has a memoir, the name of which is escaping me, which is also great.
Yes, written with Kaleem Aftab, who superb book. Yes, I agree.
And then if you Joseph von Sternberg's memoir, amazing. I mean, I literally have read every great actress's memoir. And the best one is by Tallulah Bankhead. But and I'm pretty sure it probably wasn't written by her, but with her cooperation. I mean, I think it was written by a press agent, but it's hilarious. Elia Kazan's memoir, which is fantastic and will teach you more about acting than it taught me more about acting than I ever knew. The Kazan book basically says directing actors is about getting things out of them, but you can't get it out of them unless it's in them. And then that's how I understood method acting. It has to be implanted in them somehow before you can get it out of them.
You got to put the rabbit in the hat, as Brian Cox says. You can't pull it out unless you put it in to begin with.
Exactly. So, I mean, those are all books that have been. I mean, I do read fiction too. I just want you to know that. And Molly Haskell and I actually the other day had a fantastic conversation about Willa Cather and Edith Wharton, which I wish we had recorded.
Yeah, there you go. You've got everything's got to be a podcast, otherwise it doesn't really exist these days.
Yeah. Well, but just reading is important. One more thing about Varda.
Go ahead.
She never wanted to adapt a play or a novel.
That was interesting, yeah.
Because she thought that movies were a different animal, and that movies needed attention to writing and art direction and music and editing and rhythm and all these things you couldn't just adapt. She admitted to I think stealing a scene from a novel into something she wanted to write, but that's the closest she came. But that's interesting. She just really saw movies as other. And I think that the subject of the biography you just wrote also sees movies as other. Terrence Malick made a biography, but it was not. It was an atmospheric biography. It wasn't a transcription or an adaptation. And so thank you, John. This has been the most fun I've had in 6 weeks.
Well, I'll take that as a win. Thank
If there's one thing that my family and friends know me for, it's being an amazing gift giver. I owe it all to Celebrations Passport from 1-800-Flowers.com, my one-stop shopping site that has amazing gifts for every occasion. With Celebrations Passport, I get free shipping on thousands of amazing gifts. And the more gifts I give, the more perks and rewards I earn. To learn more and take your gift giving to the next level, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Yang. You may remember me as being the guy who wanted to get money into the hands of millions of Americans. Well, I'm still at it, and I'm now the founder of Noble Mobile, the first carrier that pays you to use your phone less. With Noble, you get unlimited talk, text, and 5G data on the T-Mobile network, and you can earn up to $20 cash back a month for getting off your phone. Try it for just $10 a month. Go to noblemobile.com/yang10. That's noblemobile.com and use my code YANG10 to get paid to use your phone less.